suit that I used to go to war, so we're going to war today.
All right, right. And then we finally got Norris Whitmore.
So I'm Norris Whitmore, owner of Norris Construction Company, specialize in custom homes. We do some other developments too. Been in the Valley for doing construction for 40 years plus, and we love it here, and we're glad to be here. Thanks.
Cool. Awesome. All right. So we're going to be talking a lot today. We're going to be talking about the hiring of Sarah Zhang at the, I know I'm probably botching that pronunciation, at the New York Times. We're going to be talking about Candace Owens getting her Twitter account totally suspended, and a bunch of these hypocritical controversies. But the first thing on the docket is talking Prop 10 and this rent control. In a nutshell, Jesus, what's going on? What is Prop 10? Summarize this for me.
Well,
before I explode on November 6th.
Got it. Prop 10 is not a rent control legislation. What it is there's an existing law on the books called the Costa-Hawkins Act of 1995. Ironically, it was put together by a Democrat and a Republican, so it was a bipartisan support. Pete Wilson signed it into law. And what it states is that the municipalities cannot enact any more rent control legislation on properties, including single-family homes and condominiums.
Well, is it new properties or old properties? Because I remember reading something that it was somehow delineating the difference between old and new.
Since after 1995, you cannot enact rent control on any properties whatsoever. Here's what it is. It basically limits the state from imposing or municipalities imposing any more rent control legislation on property owners. What it means is if you repeal it, municipalities have open book to do whatever they want. The city of LA right now has probably the most onerous, Santa Monica, LA, and San Francisco have the most onerous laws on the books. Give you by example, LA County, if you own an apartment building built before 1978, October 1st, 1978, you cannot raise the rent on that tenant on a yearly basis. You're only allowed to raise it 3% a year. So, as an example, if I have a tenant that's paying $600, 3%, that's $18. So every year, I'm only allowed to raise them $18.
Well, now is it just simple interest of 3%, for lack of a better term, or is it compounding?
No.
Doing 3%.
It's just the rent. It's just the rent. $600, 3% on $600. That's it.
That's horrible.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, but the Costa-Hawkins law doesn't really do it. That will stay on the books. But what the Costa-Hawkins law does is, the big thing that it'll do is it'll enact vacancy control, and that is the hot button. What is vacancy control? Right now, for a tenant, I'm limited to what I can do. But if that tenant moves out, right now, I can raise that rent to whatever I want. I can raise it to market. So let's say that same one bedroom is $600 and the market is $1,500. If the tenant moves out, he's evicted, he leaves, whatever, I can raise the rent to $1,500. If you take Costa-Hawkins and you get it off the books, you are opening the door to the city of Los Angeles, which is very liberal, to say, oh, hold on a second. I'm only going to let you raise that 600-unit apartment to $700 or $18, whatever they want. And that's the problem there.
Okay, so this is what boggles me about California, okay? We're such a strange and unique place. I swear that we don't have a middle ground. We have the most conservative county in the United States of America, Kern County. And then right below it, its younger brother is Los Angeles, the single most liberal county in the nation, least business friendly, so on and so forth. I mean, literally bordering each other. And sometimes we do things really well. When we took the retirements of a lot of those public sector workers and made them all private, that insured them against all these political problems and has been great. Other things we do really well is, the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association.
Prop 13.
Yeah, Prop 13 is great. Like, when you go up to Lake Tahoe, the California side, in many ways, is better than the Nevada side because Prop 13 keeps these heartbreaking stories of elderly women on Social Security who have lived in their houses for 40 years from being evicted because their property values have gone up so high. On the Nevada side, they can just, some women can't afford their property taxes alone when they get boosted because the legislation can up and down them as much as they want any given year. So you get these heart-wrenching stories of people literally evicted from homes, not evicted, but forced out of homes that they've lived in for 30 or 40 years just because of legislative imbalances. So it seems like we do the Howard Jarvis thing well. This Costa-Hawkins, it's pronounced, right? Act. I read it, and it seemed smart because I believe post-Cold War with the communists, we figured out central planning didn't work. But apparently it's coming back. And so I've actually asked around about this. It passed 90-10 in
1995.
In 1995, yeah. So what... I don't want to ask. Chime in here, Ryan. There has to be a justification. I mean, what are the people saying on the other side? Because I'm just looking at this, and I'm thinking, this is exactly what the USSR did. This is what the Bolshevik societies did. What is the thing that's going to attract the bleeding heart liberal to this?
Well, you actually brought it up. It's the grandma defense. So the grandmother who's living on Social Security checks, the argument, especially when Costa-Hawkins was being debated, was that without some form of limiting rent increases, your grandmother could be kicked down the street tomorrow. And listen, you do hear cases around California of, I see it quite a bit of rent increases going $500 and people being kicked out. So that's the argument. And it's a real problem that I think, regardless of political affiliation, at least people can sympathize with.
Yeah, so that's where I get divided, though, because it's like I look at society like a steak. You got to have fat. You got to have lean muscle. The conservatives, with their reasonable approach and their generally economic approach, is that lean muscle. The bleeding heart liberals, that's the fat. You kind of have to have this interplay between the two that I think our generally Judeo-Christian society is exceptional at. I think that's why.
You have to remember one thing, Cardon, that the liberal side is always going to play on the emotion. And the emotion is you're kicking granny out. You have all these people on the street. There's homelessness. There's not enough housing. And this is probably where Norris can talk about construction and costs and what's going on with that, because it's getting harder and harder to develop in L.A. And not only because of, you have a piece of land and you want to build on it, but construction fees and city fees and in lieu of fees are through the roof. So what does that do? It forces the property owner to raise prices because somebody's got to give, because the city fees are high, property tax is high, something's got to give. And the liberal side is going to tell you, well, you're kicking them out on the street.
Well, no, I get the appeal to the emotion. I understand the liberal sense.
See, the policy side doesn't correspond with the...
Well,
but you have to
not
take
necessarily, actually, because there was a Stanford study that just came out recently that showed there's winners and losers. Like almost all policy decisions, it's a little bit more complicated. Now, don't get me wrong. I actually am very much against repealing Costa-Hawkins. I want to make that clear. However, but I am going to make another argument. There was a great Stanford study that came out and saw that certain tenants, the tenants who were living there longer term, lived in those areas 20% more after rent control was enacted. In other words, it helped the people who are already living in those areas stay in those areas, which is going to be the argument that Democrats are going to fully go after. I mean, they just came out and endorsed it in July.
Well, hold on. Before you say, okay, that's the argument they'll go after. Okay, so I get the grandma argument, all right? But what I don't get is if rent control gets enacted, well, then it's more than just grandma that starts losing things. It's everybody, because I volunteer at the Single Mothers Outreach Program, and you get these even more heartbreaking cases of women that come in, and they've got 2 kids, they're living in their car, and with tears in their eyes, they say, you know what, my husband died 2 years ago, our savings ran out about a year ago, and I've been living in my car for 6 months, but now it's so cold we can't live there anymore, and the police officer said to come here for help. And you look and you start analyzing their situation, and the rent costs have gone up, but it's because of the building costs. It has nothing to do with evil capitalists owning houses. It has to do with how expensive and hard it is to build. So if we start doing this rent control central planning thing, there's just going to be more of these poor families showing up because you disincentivize investment in housing and building and housing.
So the same study that showed that it actually benefits the people who already are living there. There is a benefit to some people.
Well, yeah, because they only have to pay $700 a month for
Their
rent
rents
in
don't go
LA.
up.
And that's real life. I can show you a building now. I'm doing a building, analyzing a building in Panorama City. It's a 60-unit building, and I kid you not, the average rent in that property, all one bedrooms, is $800.
So how's the landlord? How's the
and
landlord making? How's he making the ends meet on
The
that?
only way the landlord, well, he bought it at the right time, but it's affecting his property value now. So he sustained the plumbing going bad, the roof going bad. He replaced the windows. It's an old construction building, 1965. So there's cost involved with that. And now where they really got him in the shorts was he inherited the building from his mother. So guess what just hit him? Inheritance tax. And by the end of the day, and I sold one of his buildings. We sold the building for $3 million, and he walked away with probably $50,000 because all of it went to tax.
Well, yeah, and what's going up, like, for example, he's got to re-roof every 20 years. And 20 years from now, it's not like he can approach the contractor and say, you're only allowed to charge me 8% more than a roof would have cost in 1970 on October 1st. You know what I'm saying? So these guys are getting hosed, so they're obviously going to be, exiting the industry, I assume, right?
Well, yeah, we're going to get him out of the well, see, the long arm of California still has your hand in your pocket, because what happens is we're selling his other buildings, and he's going to do a 1031 exchange, which we talk on my show every Monday about. And what's going to happen is he's going to 1031, but he's going to go outside of the state. He's going to buy what's called a triple net property, Walgreens, Jack in the Box, all that type of deal.
Yeah.
But California says, and we had an expert here says, if you invest out of the state, you have to report to us every year your gains, and if you sell, guess what? California's going to want their money.
But isn't that against double taxation law in the Constitution?
That's too much.
Like,
man.
I'm
It's too
sorry, but
much.
isn't that a point where it starts getting unconstitutional because it's double taxation? Because you're obviously having to pay taxes, and let's just say invested in Nevada.
Well,
So
the
then
only-
you're paying property
yeah,
taxes
the-
in Nevada and to California. That's just not constitutional.
The only way you're going to avoid that tax consequences is, do you remember, Cody? Do you remember what it is? Death.
No.
If his spouse passes away, I kid you not.
So
If the
someone's got to die.
Yeah, somebody's got to die. If the spouse dies, he has what's called a step-up in basis. Now there's no capital.
Well, now you're
gains.
just
You can take it off.
incentivizing people. Now you're just incentivizing. So
Believe me, I always start before I ask about when somebody wants to sell a building. I ask them, "Is your spouse still alive?" And they ask me, "Why would you ask me that strange question?" I said, "There's a reason behind it. I'm not condoning you to go and knocking her off, or knocking him off, but I have to ask the question because that's the only way around it."
if not, you know a guy, right? No, I'm just kidding. So Ryan's obviously
I am
got
Colombian.
yeah. Okay, so Ryan's obviously got some on the tip of his tongue. You're talking about a study here, and so.
Well, I think we've even missed the point, which is the main argument against it. And even
Okay.
the Stanford study went into it, which is it ignores simple supply and demand. We
Okay.
have limited supply and high demand, and we're about to make that high demand asset or assets even more. We're essentially giving it more demand, more incentive to go there. So what the Stanford study actually showed was, and it's ironic that many of the people who are pushing for this repeal are groups against gentrification and higher rents and so forth, but it actually shortened the supply because more owners converted to condos.
Exactly.
Or found other loopholes around it, so it shortened the supply. People stayed there longer, which also shortened the supply. So average rents went up about 5.1% just in about 10 years, more than it
nothing.
would have without rent control.
5% more than it would have without
more than
rent
it would
control.
have.
Here's two statistics that we haven't looked at. Number one, nobody's forcing anybody to live in California.
Okay.
That's true.
You can go to Arizona, you can go to Nevada, you can get in that car with your family and say, you know what, it's too high here, I can't afford it. I did not prepare myself in college, I don't have a good job, etc. I can't make it here. Let me go to Arizona. The other thing is, we're not building enough. There's no way to build enough. And with the construction costs, and again, Norris mentioned a little bit about this. Maybe you can give us a little breakdown on what goes on construction fees to build something, what it costs. You can't build enough product to house everybody.
That's exactly why I brought you here.
For
Yeah.
1 second. So this has been the dagger in my side.
I mean, you got a really clenched fist, man.
For 10 years, man. I mean, it's just the city. I hate to bring up the city of Santa Clarita, but that's where we live, right?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So if I want to build a 100-unit apartment in the city of Santa Clarita, the fees alone are $40,000 a door.
Just a door.
Before you even break ground.
$4 million I've got to give the city in fees, permit fees, B&T fees, library fees, fire fees. I'll go Cassick Lake Water, go down the line. And before I'm done, write them a check for $4 million.
Okay, so wait, hold on a second.
Before I build anything.
Okay.
And then I get a permit, then I can start building. Well, what that does, it drives the cost of the land to zero. So the guy I'm trying to buy the land from, I really can't pay him for his land because the city's taking all the money. But he's not going to sell me the land for free. So what that do, that comes to the point where we don't build. And that's why there's no apartments except for the big builders that are building roads, and they get around some of the fees to build them. Like, was it 4 points? What's it called up there?
5 points.
5 points?
Yeah, there's 5 points.
I think that's probably one of the developments that probably gets some
Okay,
concessions.
so
But a little guy like me, an infill builder, I find 5 acres, I want to build a 100-unit apartment, I'm out.
Forgot about it, yeah.
Okay, so we're going to, this is exactly what we want to get to.
Oh, and by the way, there's one more thing that you didn't talk about is, that I don't know how it is in Santa Clarita, but I know in the city of LA is they'll say, oh, we'll let you build a couple more units, but you're going to have to include affordable housing in there. So you're going to have to set aside 10% of the building for affordable units, meaning I'll never be able to recuperate my rent on those units. My rent will be $500-600.
It's a sacrificial lamb.
It's a wash. You'll never get that money back.
No.
Okay, so in a
even on the
nutshell,
resale.
before our commercial break here, in a nutshell, to me, the biggest frustration here is I've always understood the phrase that those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. But I've always viewed history as like mistakes we made 100 and 200 years ago, not maybe in the 70s in New York City within living memory of my parents, right? We always viewed history as this thing of at least being 100 years old, right? So to me,
San
it's
Francisco too.
Santa
Monica.
I look at what rent control, for lack of a better term, did to New York City in the 70s and 80s, what happened in San Francisco in the 80s and 90s, and I just view this as absolutely disastrous. And usually I find that when I talk with liberals on the show that there is kind of like this classic, security versus freedom argument, and it just depends on where you sit in the scale. But for me, this seems stupid for all parties involved, because if you're really representing the underdog, the underclass, the single mothers, the minorities, you would not want to engage in this because it's bad for all of these groups, okay? So what we're going to talk about when we get back is Ryan's going to give us a little bit more insight into the law and effects and studies on it, and then I want to dig down deep with Norris and talk about what is keeping us from building, because I really think the only way we'll ever solve this problem, because our population is booming and the demand is booming, is going to be with more doors and more houses. So this is Problem Solver Politics. Stay tuned. We'll be back in a minute.
Santa Clarita Philharmonic has begun its season of free concerts. The SCP is a non-profit community-based volunteer symphony orchestra comprised of local musicians from throughout the Santa Clarita Valley who are dedicated to providing quality classical music for the residents of the Santa Clarita Valley. Like the Santa Clarita Philharmonic on Facebook or visit santaclaritaphilharmonic.org for more information.
Your hometown station.
KHTS is your official Santa Clarita Dodger station. You can catch all evening games right here on your hometown station. For all the latest news and updates on your Los Angeles Dodgers, KHTS has you covered. Go to hometownstation.com.
98.1 FM and AM 1220.
Everybody wants cheap airfare, but where do you find it? You call low-cost airlines. Their prices are direct from the airlines, and they're so low you can't find these fares published anywhere. They specialize in cheap flights, discount hotel rooms, cheap car rental rates, and great package deals anywhere around the world. Wherever you want to go, they can help you get there cheaply and with a best price guarantee. If you want the lowest prices on your airline tickets or other travel services, call now. That's right, call. That's the only way to get these rates. Experts are standing by 24/7 to get you the cheapest airfare and hotel rates available. So don't wait. Call right now for the lowest travel prices anywhere and for great last-minute travel deals, too. Call right now. Operators are standing by. 1-800-452-1075. 800-452-1075. 800-452-1075. That's 1-800-452-1075.
Koalas at the zoo. Barbara Zoo. Koalas at the zoo. They're at the zoo. So fuzzy and cute. They're super cute. And they're waiting there for you.
Come visit Edmund and Thackeray, the new koalas at the Santa Barbara Zoo today.
Koalas at the zoo.
Death and taxes.
All right, welcome back to Problem Solver Politics. We are in the studio with Cardon Ellis. I'm your host. We got Ryan Peterson, Jesus Now, and also Norris Whitmore talking about basically what, for lack of a better term, is rent control and how it is coming to a neighborhood near you if the Democrats have their way. You know, I got to tell you, this reminds me of the SB 54 argument. This really, really reminds me of the SB 54 argument where it completely just blew apart party lines. You had hardcore Democrats furious about it. You had Republicans furious about it. And then on both sides, just pandemonium, not the usual, conservative versus liberalism argument. So anyway, for those of you that just tuned in, we're talking about a bill that's going to be hitting the ballots on November 6th called Prop 10. And it's basically trying to repeal existing legislation from 1995. I always botch the pronunciation. What's the pronunciation again, Jesus?
Costa-Hawkins.
The Costa-Hawkins Act.
2 last names.
Yeah, of the two legislators that actually put it into play.
Jim Acosta and something else.
Yeah. Anyway, it basically prevented municipalities from enacting rent control on structures that were built prior to sometime around 1995 and 1996. And we're discussing the drastic effects that would happen. Ryan seems to be the expert with all of his studies on this, and he does deal with residential real estate, leases, rentals, and everything all day long. So hit me with the facts and the figures of how this affects us, and then what you think the true fix would be.
Oh, is that all?
Yeah, is that all? Yeah.
Well, overall, I could go over some of the numbers, but quite frankly, when it comes down to is I guess I'll just focus quickly on the solutions, or
perfect.
The spirit of it.
Yeah.
So, I think the spirit of building more houses and building more units has started to gain a little bit more traction than it used to in California and Sacramento, and that's with the promotion of ADUs in the back. Although there's also some debate right now whether those are subject to rent control or not.
Okay,
everything will be subject to rent control because
see.
Once you get rid of Costa-Hawkins, it's housing condos.
Absolutely.
Well, and it looks like
condos.
Well, pardon my interruption really fast, but also the other thing that frustrates me is that it seems like in Santa Clarita, the only thing that gets built anymore are tract homes. And I don't have anything against
industrial
developers.
property.
Yeah, tract homes and industrial property. I don't have anything wrong with a tract neighborhood going up, right? But let's face it, it is a little bit boring, and we made fun of it in the 60s for a reason. I lament the fact that nobody actually just goes out and builds their own homes they want anymore, and you no longer have these organic neighborhoods. You have these synthesized, synthetic, and sterilized neighborhoods where only the millionaire Lennars and D.R. Hortons make the millions, instead of guys like Norris or guys like you and me that want to say, hey, I'll invest in 3 acres and build 3 houses, right?
And that's absolutely it. Just the barrier of entry is just too high. And that's for both, right now we just have an overall housing problem. We need to build more local houses, not just tract homes, but we also do need to build more tract homes. We need to build up, so millionaires need to get a little bit more okay with losing some of those views.
Hey, let me jump in here real quick. You're talking about building homes, but we got 21,000 homes sitting over here off the 126?
126, yeah.
126. How many years has it been? Like 10, 15 years?
Yeah, it's probably been 20 years, though, guys. Try to get that development going.
20 billion. We're talking about more homes, but they will not let you build it. I just sold 240 acres on Pico. It's taken me 5 years to get through the city just to get the tentative tract map to build. So when we talk about homes, yes, but again, here comes the city again blocking everything.
Here's the holdup. The politicians, it's city council, politicians don't want to touch this issue, quite frankly, because building more houses requires dealing with neighbors, dealing with people, angry city council meetings of saying, not in my backyard. And I'm probably the most liberal person on this panel, maybe. And I'm not even that liberal. I'm quite frankly for whatever works. I'm for government housing sometimes, but spot. And I'm for also building a lot more developments and making it much easier for builders like
But it can't just be NIMBYism, though.
I've gone to a number of these city council meetings, and the amount of just fury when even it's brought up that, we'll build some units, we'll build 10-story building in this block.
Well, I don't think people are opposed to neighbors,
But I'm
right?
and I'm
No, I've
focusing
been there. Ryan's right on, man. They come out with claws, man, at these meetings. I've been.
Well, they come out with clause in certain projects. Like, I mean, I've seen. I've been to a couple of your meetings, and most are pretty tame. But there's some where, like, there's going to be one time I remember they're complaining that it was above the percentage of regular houses per acre, which, okay, I guess that's kind of an understandable argument. You know what I'm saying? But generally, I haven't really felt a consensus that people don't want houses. I usually hear the clause come out when they say, like, oh, we're going to build a dump site, or oh, we're gonna build, like, the Chiquita landfill extension or something.
The only people who come to these meetings are people who don't want it. No one goes out to these meetings saying, yes, I want. Yeah, too much time on their hands, and that's exactly it.
So we should stop having them. No, but in all honesty, I have a problem with some of these meetings sometimes, though, because, like, Norris,
go ahead.
Is that if he buys land and it's legally zoned for X amount of houses, this is America. A man should be able to invest in as long as it's legal. You know what I'm saying? I mean, if he's trying to cram 20 houses where it's legally only to have 5, then yeah, I think that should be stopped. But if there's 5 houses that can be built on that 1 acre of land, regardless of what the neighbors think, he should be able to do that unless it's part of a pre-existing HOA or some kind of pre-existing agreement. Like, I do not see the problem with this. Yet for some reason, I've seen him get blocked multiple times on projects. And to me, I view that as un-American.
Yeah, I mean, part of the problem, it comes back to government. The city has city agencies. They'll have their general plan. They'll have zoning in each area, and they'll have a zoning of maximum of 5,000 per square feet per lot. Let's say that's the zone.
Okay.
And I come in, and my zone that I want to do is 10,000 square feet per lot, and I get shut down because all homeowners show up, and they say, no, we want 20,000 square feet per lot. Well, I can't make any money at 20,000 square feet per lot. Well, in turn, they don't care, and I understand that they want to keep their little
developer.
They want to keep their little area untouched. But if you're living, this is for anybody, okay? If you buy a house next to a field, and you think for 1 second it's going to stay that field forever, you're being very naive about your
Well, the only
purchase.
thing I don't get is, first off, I don't understand what right is automatically granted to somebody who does not own property. See, I was furious. When I was in the children's hospital, I had 23 complaints against me by a stupid neighbor that was just trying to get it out for me, complaining about everything from where I parked my cars to complaining about the plants that I built. He complained when I was painting my house. I was actually beautifying my house, and somehow there was a way that I had a code enforcement guy come out. And I really reached a point where I realized, wait, hold on a second. Is this my house or is it his? I get if you're an HOA and you're in Stevenson Ranch, and if going into the transaction, okay, I have to play ball because this is cookie cutter land and they've got a big HOA. But to a certain extent, if you have a house and it is yours, isn't it a fundamentally constitutional construct, this idea that private property is private property, not communal property, right? I mean, am I crazy here?
No, it's just like if you have oak trees on your property, they're not yours. You can't do what you want with them.
Well, let me give this to you. This will really blow your hair back. Is the house really yours after you pay it off?
I
think about that. Hold on a second. Think about that. We're talking about the same granny, same person who's owned the house for 30,
except for
40
property
years.
tax, you still have to pay on it. Yeah.
So that's it.
What happens if I don't pay my property? I've been 30 years paying property tax, paying the mortgage off. I've waited it out. I've worked hard. My house is paid off.
Well, yeah, but property
finally.
taxes
Hold
are
on
how
a
we
second.
pay for
What
roads
happens?
and schools.
What happens to that person when they paid their house off? They own it free and clear, and they do not pay the property tax. What happens? Do you tell me? You work with houses.
To be fair, it takes 6 years of them not paying property taxes.
The government
before
comes and takes
it.
it
What happens?
It does take a while.
Yeah, but the thing is,
and that does need
but
to pay
they take
for
it away.
some.
So your point is,
things like
who's the
roads
owner of the house?
Who's the owner of the house?
well,
The
no,
government or you?
but I view property taxation is
Very simple.
But property taxation is a justifiable taxation because the demand of the schools, the demand of the roads,
He's been
the demand of
paying
what it pays.
30 years. What more do you want to suck out of the person?
Yeah, but I'm saying, look, hold on a second. The demand of the school doesn't go away after 30 years.
Yeah, ultimately you have to make a choice. Something has to be done to pay for those services.
Now,
And
granted,
you could do a different type of tax that maybe is more fair, but for right now,
Yeah, because hold on a second.
All right,
If
we're
my
talking
grandma-
about tax. Let me give
That's another whole
now,
That's a whole
topic.
other- yeah.
Just let me
Getting a
give this
little
to
off
you.
topic.
Okay.
State of California pays 13.3% in taxes, state tax.
Yeah, 13.4 now.
1% in property taxes. Let's not even talk about 8.75 in sales tax. How much more do you want to extract from the people to pay for this?
Look, you're talking
Where's
to
that money going?
You're talking to a huge tax advocate, right? And as conservative as I am against taxes, I don't necessarily think that property taxes should go away just because somebody has paid for 30 years.
By the way, by 30 years, your kids are out of the house.
No, I know they're out of the house, but here's the
So
deal.
where's the burden on the school?
Well, hold on a second. Just because my grandmother buys a house and then, she uses it for 30 years raising her kids. Let's just say my mother moves in with her and then has her kids in there. It doesn't mean that the demand of the school goes away. And besides, it's not just schools that are paid for with property tax. There's a lot of municipal services. In fact, property tax is one of the only actually legitimate taxes we have in our taxation system. When you open up your phone bill, half of those FCC taxes were enacted to replace the glass insulators on telegraph poles because the Indians would steal them. And when the Indians stopped stealing them and we stopped having the Pony Express, they didn't stop taxing us. They kept taxing us, right? So I think there's a lot of goofy, stupid taxes out there, but there's some reasonable ones. We can argue property taxation the other day. What I'm trying to figure out is how do we make it so that this supposed demand for rent control goes away so we can build more houses? Like, what is keeping us from building houses?
Politicians who will say we need to build more houses and doing two things. I mean, I do think you have to work in conjunction, both government affordable housing, so you're going to appease more liberal sided politicians and constituents, but also streamlining the process and somehow, I mean, while still allowing people to complain at city council meetings, sometimes just having that spine of a politician to say, you know what? No, we're still going to build this project. We're still going to go forward. We're not going to restrict just because you don't like the view of this major development. We're going to still build. We need more houses. Period.
You might notice how fast is it? How quick can you build in Texas? Do you think about Texas?
Well, I don't know. What I do know about Texas, Montana, Colorado, a lot of these, you bring your plans in. Montana, a friend of mine has property in Montana, right? So when he wants to build on his property, he goes to the local building safety office with his plan, and they charge him for an electrical permit and a sewage permit. Only inspections you have. And that's it. I mean, that's
You're
Montana.
ready to rock.
Yeah, so in California, let's say we don't do that. But let's say I have a customer right now. Big house, year and a half to get a building permit for one house on an approved lot.
I mean, that is crazy. A year and a half. Like, where are they living?
Well, they have their house
in a
but
Winnebago,
but they've paid for their lot, whether it be $500,000 or $1 million. Boom, property taxes.
Okay, so then
year,
what is their justification for this? I mean, a year and a half is like, are they sitting for 3 months on a piece of paper? Like, what is there has to be a justification for this. Like, for example, one of my buddies applied to work for the FBI, and it took 18 months for them to approve whether or not he could work for the FBI. Well, I get that because you're going to be the guy out there defending our Constitution against some of America's worst criminals.
Like Comey?
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So it's like, I get it if FBI agents are vetted for 18 months. But a house, a thing of brick and mortar that does no pollution, does nothing but sit there and house individuals, why does it take 18 months?
When you hired a qualified architect, that's a licensed architect to build it for you, so you would expect he knows what he's doing, right? If the house falls down, who's gonna be
exactly? What it's just saying. So you have an architect, you have an engineer.
Yeah, but these guys pump these things out in 2 or 3
then
weeks.
not only do we have those guys involved, but after you get a permit, as the house is being constructed or building, they have special structural observations from the engineer and deputy inspectors and a city inspector. Why do I need a city inspector? I
Okay.
got inspectors all over the place.
Okay, then riddle me this. I think we all pretty much have come to the agreement that the solution is not rent control. The solution is actually supplying the market with more supply so that the demand becomes a little bit more manageable, right?
And get the cost.
And then get
of
the cost
fees,
down.
The government fees down.
So then in your experience, what, because you're the builder of this group, what is the number one thing keeping us from building, and how do we streamline this process like Ryan talks about? I mean, the show's called Problem Solver Politics. So we know the problem. Like what is the solve? You're the guy out there trying to build these houses, you know, and I see your clenched fist there. Like this is a real, this is a visceral, this guy's coming from real experience and real frustration here. What is it that you need as a builder so that there is less of the nonsense?
Streamline the process to get the building permit. Let's get it done so people can go to work. Because if I'm waiting around for a year and a half, I'm not getting paid, and none of my subcontractors are getting paid until I start building that house. So
well, what's not streamlined about it? Because it's an easy word to
Oh,
throw
easy
around.
word.
But like for example, one of my frustrations sometimes in the licensing of the guys for my company is that none of it's internet based. Everything is based upon first class mail. So we consistently are losing 7 to 10 days in our correspondence with the government because they have just never gone internet based. And we're talking in 2018.
Go to the DMV.
Yeah, go to the DMV. So, like, what is the streamlining that needs to get done here? Because, I mean, this is absurdism that we've got going on.
Well, they
now.
probably need more people at the building and safety department. They don't have enough people checking plans, and when it's real busy, and then when it gets slow, they got people standing around. So I know it's a balance there, but
The fees.
it's the fees are crazy.
I mean, what are we
Come on,
talking
Cardon,
here?
$40,000 a door for apartment building, $4 million.
Yeah, no, go back on that. Are you telling me that if I sold my house, you know, I actually, my house is not a good example because it's only 1,000 square feet. But let's just say I had a 2,400 square foot house, and I wanted to divide it into 3 apartments. Not 3 apartments, but like a triplex instead of a duplex. I would have to pay $120,000 in permit fees.
Well, you're talking taking existing dwelling and dividing it up. I'm talking about a new building.
construction.
Let's say you wanted to build your house where it is.
Okay.
It's going to be brand new. Fees around $60,000 to build
Wow.
your house for permit fees, everything that goes
In
along
lieu
with
of
it.
fees.
Okay, so
city
just
fee, you name it.
hit me with this. Right now in Happy Valley, how much is a 10,000 square foot lot going for right now, guys? What?
Probably 2.5, something
Yeah.
like that. I'm guessing.
Yeah.
2.5.
250,000.
250,000. Okay, so if I want to build a 3 apartment
If
place,
you could.
if I could,
Okay.
let's just say if
Because
I
it
could,
depends if it's zoned for it or not. It might be just R1.
that's fine. But still,
Let's
let's
say
just
a zone for it. You're
R3.
on
like my
Walnut-
buddy that
you're
has
on
a
Walnut
place
Street,
on. Yeah, my
right?
buddy has a place on Valley Street, and I know it's UR3 or whatever. So I don't want to get in the weeds, but these are zonings that allow you to build commercial and or residential property. But so if I buy that little spot, it's like 8,000, 10,000 acres. I get his backyard, and I want to put a nice, cozy 3 units with 6 parking spots that everybody can happily live in. That besides paying the $250,000 for the 10,000 square foot lot, on top of that, I have to pay $120,000 before I can even engage in paying the $40,000 to $50,000 it takes to get utilities there.
Yeah, that's a round number. That's probably low. It probably can go up from that.
And then you got to convince your neighbors to let you build it.
So okay, no,
Even though it's zoned. Hey,
even though it's zoned, even
for
though
it,
it's
you
zoned
can
for
do it, but you can't do anything. So you bought the land because the guy that's selling is not going to wait forever. You got to
Yeah.
pay for the land, and then you find out, oh, I can only build 1 unit when you think you can build 3 because it says 3.
Now you just overpaid.
Now you overpay for the land.
And then, by the way, we haven't even took some construction costs maybe to build that, what, 250?
We haven't started that.
What do you
I
say,
mean,
250, 260 a square foot to build?
It's up and down. So depending on what we're building, right?
Yeah.
But those numbers are realistic numbers. On
so
some
you
product.
basically have to dump $500,000 before you can even.
Before you buy the couch and the refrigerator.
So yeah, so before you can even build a triplex, a simple triplex like the ones I grew up in the Valencia fairways, you're dumping $500,000 into this. So
Without
And
batting
could
an
take,
eye.
Could take you 8 months to get a permit on a little project like that.
Well-
If you don't have any opposition, right?
Yeah. Well, I think we've also brought up a really interesting point, which is all these fees had to come from somewhere. We had to pay for this somehow. And a large part of that is both Republicans and Democrats saying, well, I'm not going to be the one who raises taxes, but we can raise some fees to offset those taxes.
But they'll both, at least the Republicans will say, hey, we'll lower your taxes.
We'll lower your taxes, but we won't offset it enough. So now we have fees to offset those lots of taxes.
Let me give you this real life example.
Hold on one second. What I'm going to do is we're going to go to a quick commercial break really fast because I sense a really good example coming. No, this is a good example, and I see the smile in his eyes, and I know exactly what he's going to do right now. So just don't touch that dial. We're going to come back in a minute and hear this awesome earth-shattering example. This is Problem Solver Politics.
Every year, thousands of local children, teens, and adults receive treatment at the Child and Family Center for depression, anger, anxiety, abuse, thoughts of suicide, and drug and alcohol addictions. Our professional staff provides outpatient services at office locations, in the home, the community, and on many elementary, junior, and high school campuses throughout our valley. If you need help, contact Child and Family Center at 259-9439 or childfamilycenter.org. Improving lives, one family at a time.
Accesso Technology is holding an interview event on August 3rd, 4th, and 5th at Westfield Valencia Town Center. You'll have an opportunity to support Accesso's award-winning ride queuing solution. We're hiring 65-plus entry-level cashiers and ride attendants to work on-site at the Flash Pass operations at Six Flags Magic Mountain. Enjoy flexible hours and free park passes on your days off. Apply now at summerparkjobs.com. Meet our team at the Westfield Valencia Town Center the first weekend of August. Who said work can't be fun?
Once heart attack symptoms begin, delaying treatment increases the risk of heart damage, disability, and even death. Time is critical. Leading the Valley with the most advanced digital technology and treatment times that beat national best practice goals, Providence offers emergency coronary angioplasty and stenting performed by highly trained board-certified cardiologists. For more information, call 1-888-HEALING. The road to healing leads to Providence.
All right. Welcome back to Problem Solver Politics. I am your host, Cardon Ellis. We're in the studio with Ryan Peterson, real estate agent extraordinaire. We also got Jesus Anao, commercial real estate extraordinaire. And we got Norris Whitmore, builder par excellence in the Santa Clarita Valley. We're talking about Democrats' attempt right now to repeal the 1995 Costa-Hawkins Act to basically be able to enact rent control. And we've pretty much come to the agreement that the problem is not controlling the rent. The problem is actually upping the supply of houses. But right now, usually these shows are a lot easier. Usually it's a lot more cut and dry. I kind of feel like I've opened a little bit of Pandora's box here. I really believe the decline of America has been a bipartisan affair. And it seems like trying to meander through this minefield in this spaghetti noodle box of who's at fault in stopping us from building new houses is a frustrating mess. So we got Norris Whitmore here, who is basically trying to build a bunch of houses, and Jesus, who has also been trying to facilitate a bunch of transactions to better the amount of doors and homes that we have in the Santa Clarita. And they've been getting all kinds of resistance and all kinds of hyper-regulation to the point of it becoming an absolute barrier to entry and solving of the problem. So, Jesus, you were going to give us a good example.
All right. So about 4 months ago, I closed on 240 acres here on Pico Canyon, right next to the
like Mentryville and stuff, right?
Yes, Southern Oaks, right? So it's 240 acres outside Southern Oaks. So as a right, they could have built on all those 240 acres, but they said, no, you're not. You're not going to build that. The environment, the steckle frog, or the spadefoot frog is out. All kinds of nonsense, right? We're in escrow for 5 years.
Well,
so,
hold on a second. It's not nonsense to want to make sure there's no endangered species.
Well, no, it was nonsense because the environmentalist, the person that went out there from the state to check it, didn't find anything.
Okay.
And they still challenged and said, no, they're out there.
Well,
they're out there.
No,
we know they're out there. But that isn't the point I was trying to make.
Okay.
So here I am. We're getting this project. You're going through the tenant track process. And I'm here in LA County. I'm sitting in a big conference room. There's a bunch of people. There's fires there. Parks and Recs are there. Everybody's there, right? So everybody's going around the table. They're putting their 2 cents about the project, what they expect. So we go to Parks and Recs. And they say, okay, what would you like out of this project? What would you like to see? Would you like to see, a nice playground with maybe some fountains or something, for the kids to run around, etc.? They said, no, we don't want any of that. Just give us the money. It was like a couple of million bucks. Just give us the money. We don't care what you do. Just
we
give
don't
us
know
the
where
money.
the money goes,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, just give us the money. I was so shocked. I was sitting there like, you're kidding me. He said, yeah, just write us a check. We're good. Next. I couldn't believe it. Where's that money going?
Well, didn't you have a similar situation with a Parks and Rec fee that you were mentioning earlier in the break?
Yeah, it was. This whole fee is outrageous to me. It's called a Quimby fee.
Okay.
Santa Clarita is the only one I know that has it. So it's Park and Recs.
Okay.
And development I was trying to do is 60-unit senior independent living where they're taken care of, right?
So the one on Copper Hill?
No, it was another one, Newhall area.
Okay.
And I'm at a One Stop, and I get this piece of paper slid over to me.
One Stop is
with the city to kind of tell you what you can do. It's a very nice thing that they have over there.
Okay.
But you didn't tell them what was on the paper, right? It was just a big number and a gun.
Yeah, what it was.
A picture of a gun?
Yeah, the guy knew what the use was, right? He knew what I was asking for, and he knew how many units, and they slide over a piece of paper that says the fee's $1 million.
$1 million bucks
and I go,
for
wait a
a
second,
what?
For a park and recreational fee?
Oh wait, but they were charging $1 million as a permit fee for a what?
It's not a permit.
Well, not a permit fee,
it's
but
just a fee
for a what type of structure? You said it was 60 units or
60 units, yeah.
For seniors, okay?
60 units for seniors.
You're giving back to the community something great, right?
All of these baby boomers are also, I mean, they're getting really old, dude, so we need a lot of these things.
Exactly. So,
$1
million. So I said, how do I get, that's it? What if I do this use? He goes, oh, then it's zero. It was another use that I can't disclose, but if I do this other use, and he goes, oh, it's zero then. I go, what's the difference? Why do you need $1 million from me on my little project to spend on your parks wherever? I don't know who goes to. How many parks do we need?
I get.
How many parks with $1 million? What?
Well, no, I mean, I get. I think the parks is good, and I think that if you're.
No, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying
but that's just a point that's prohibitive. I mean, $1 million is.
They throw $1 million around like it's $10. Oh, it's $1 million for this, and it's $1 million for that.
I have a question with regards to that. Would theoretically some form of taxation to offset fees on new builds, simply to just offset that $1 million, assuming that $1 million is needed? Right,
I have a novel approach. Scratch the $1 million and just let them build it.
Well, then let's say you need to raise money.
But then you're going to get ugly communities like down in the valley where there's not enough parks
and they're not going to let you do that. It's not going to cost you $1 million. Say he says, okay, we're not going to let you. Don't give us the $1 million, but take $250 and build a killer park next to it. Would you do that?
Yeah, or use some money,
for a number of years,
or you got to have an X amount of dollars you got to put into your development in landscaping and making it look beautiful. Make it park-like, right?
Okay.
Because I asked him, I go, well, can I use that money for my own purpose? No. That's going to go somewhere else, right?
The general fund.
Well,
So
the weird thing is that.
But if you want to raise money for parks, I mean, take a little bit from everybody. You know, I'll contribute a little bit every year. You know, but like $10 on your property tax bill over how many thousands of houses creates a lot of money for your parks every year.
I get that we're lucky that the city of Santa Clarita does not enact its own city tax. Like, unlike New York City and unlike Los Angeles that enact its own city tax, we are preserved from city tax. I noticed that when I bought my house, I had a ton of nitpicky little consumption taxes, but I'm kind of okay with that if that's how you offset some of these costs. But for me, I look at $1 million tax as absurd because I know the Parks and Rec budget, I think, is only $3 million per year in our. Isn't the Santa Clarita Parks and Rec budget? I was invited to one of their meetings once, and I remember that they proudly said on their website that we, control a budget of $3 million. And they're asking you for a third of their budget for one 60-unit assisted living space.
I think a likely culprit of that is that it's a straight fee. And because no one wanted to do it as a tax,
I can't believe you said that with a straight face.
Well, yeah, no, it's a fee, per transaction based off of.
It is a fee. It's just a flat fee.
It's just a flat fee, but it's a barrier now to build rather than, like you said. I think putting on property tax bills, I'd be happy to pay a little bit.
Right, but I mean, what's it do? So everybody says, let's build more of this stuff. Then they slide these fees in front of you. And then
who do we
stop? I'm done.
It's just on you rather than on all homeowners.
Yeah.
All homeowners and everyone would benefit.
If they're going to build a park for everyone to use, should everyone contribute?
Yeah.
Instead of one guy paying for half of it.
I pay for it already. It's called HOA in my community.
Yeah.
There you go.
Assuming there is
So then,
HOA,
okay, we got
I mean.
30 seconds left here. In your opinion, Norris, who do we got to write? Who do we have to call? Who do we have to email? Like instead of the Women's March, you know what I'm saying, on Washington angry at Trump, how about the We Don't Have Enough Houses March? You know what I'm saying? Like if we're really trying to help the single mothers out there who've just become homeless because their eviction notice and they're too high rent, and we want to help those people because we're bleeding heart liberals, who do we march on to make this work?
Sacramento, get everybody out.
Okay. All right. Well, we can talk about that next week.
I like that. That's
we do
good.
got
That
elections coming up. And in fact, Jesus is going to be in one of those hot seats pretty soon, too. So don't touch that dial, guys. It's been an awesome time talking with you here. Try and write your congressman to make sure that this gets as much friction and as much pushback as possible. And then come visit us next week and let's see how it goes. This is Problem Solving Politics.